High above the village of Hohenschwangau, near Füssen in southwest Bavaria, a silhouette rises from the rugged Alps that seems to belong more to the realm of ink and paper than to stone and mortar. It stands perched on a precarious ridge, defying gravity and logic, enveloped often by the thick morning mists that roll off the Tyrolean mountains. This is Neuschwanstein. To the modern eye, it is the quintessential image of a fairy tale. It is the logo of the Walt Disney Company, the inspiration for Sleeping Beauty's castle, and a bucket list destination for over 1.4 million visitors every year. It appears on jigsaw puzzles, snow globes, and posters in travel agencies from Tokyo to Toronto. But the gleaming white limestone facade hides a history that is far from a children's story. The origins of this castle are not rooted in tactical defense or military might. There are no thick walls designed to repel cannon fire, and its towers offer no strategic advantage in war. Instead, this structure is a tangible manifestation of a single human mind, a mind that was brilliant, tortured, poetic, and ultimately doomed. It is a stage set built of stone, a temple to friendship, and a fortress of solitude for a king who desperately wanted to disappear from the world. To understand the castle, we must look past the postcards and into the soul of its creator, King Ludwig II of Bavaria. This was not just a building project, it was a desperate attempt to create an alternative reality where a king could still reign with absolute power, not over a country, but over a dream. Ludwig was born in 1845, the eldest son of King Maximilian II. From the very beginning, his life was steeped in the romanticism of the German Middle Ages. He spent his summers at Hohenschwangau Castle, his father's residence, which was itself a neo-Gothic reconstruction built upon medieval ruins. The walls of his childhood bedroom were painted with scenes of knights, legends, and specifically, the saga of the Swan Knight, Lohengrin. The swan became Ludwig's personal totem. It represented purity, grace, and the tragic solitude of the artist. As a boy, he was sensitive and imaginative, preferring play acting and solitude to military drills or statecraft. He was ill-prepared for the harsh realities of politics. Tragedy struck early. In 1864, his father died suddenly, and Ludwig ascended the throne at the tender age of 18. He was tall, striking, with dark curling hair and burning eyes. The fairy tale king even then. The Bavarian people adored him, But Ludwig hated the job. He ascended to power at a time when the power of kings was waning, eclipsed by parliaments and the rising might of Prussia. 2 years into his reign, Bavaria lost a war against Prussia. Ludwig was forced to sign a Schutz- und Trutzbündnis, a defensive alliance that effectively stripped him of his sovereignty, making him a vassal to his uncle, the future Kaiser Wilhelm I. For a man raised on the divine right of kings, this was a humiliation he could not bear. If he could not be a real king in the capital of Munich, he decided he would build his own kingdom in the mountains, a kingdom of myth, where his sovereignty would never be questioned. The concept for Neuschwanstein was born in 1868. Ludwig wrote to his idol and close friend, the composer Richard Wagner, "It is my intention to rebuild the old castle ruin of Hohenschwangau near the Pilat Gorge in the authentic style of the old German knights' castles." This letter is crucial. Ludwig did not want a contemporary palace. He wanted a habitable theatrical production. It is telling that the initial sketches for Neuschwanstein were not drawn by an architect, but by Christian Jank, a scenic painter from the Munich Court Theater. Ludwig wanted the dramatic flair of a stage set, focusing on the visual impact rather than architectural practicality. The task of turning these painted dreams into static reality fell to architects Eduard Riedel and later Georg von Dolman. They faced a nightmare of engineering. The site Ludwig chose was a twin-peaked rock ridge. To even begin construction, the summit had to be blasted away with dynamite to create a level foundation. The cornerstone was laid on September 5th, 1869. Ludwig's vision was specific. He wanted a structure that echoed the Romanesque style of the 13th century. Simple geometric forms, round arches, and heavy towers, combined with the soaring verticality of the Gothic era. He drew inspiration from the Wartburg Castle in Eisenach, but he demanded that his castle be more idealized, more perfect, and more isolated than any real medieval fortress ever was. There is a profound irony built into the walls of Neuschwanstein. While it was designed to look like a relic of the Middle Ages, a place where a knight might live by candlelight, it was actually a marvel of high-tech Victorian engineering. Ludwig demanded the illusion of the past, but refused to live without the comforts of the future. The construction site utilized steam-powered cranes to lift the heavy limestone blocks. The steel skeletons that support the structure were cutting-edge industrial technology, similar to what would later be used in skyscrapers. Inside the castle, the medieval fantasy was sustained by modern invention. The castle was equipped with a battery-powered bell system for summoning servants. It had running water on every floor, including hot water in the kitchen. The king's toilet was a flushing system with water drawn from a nearby spring. An elaborate warm air heating system circulated through pipes, keeping the drafty stone halls comfortable during the harsh Bavarian winters. Perhaps most surprisingly, the castle had a telephone line connecting it to the older castle down the hill. Ludwig used technology to facilitate his isolation. He wanted the magic of the Middle Ages, but he used the engines of the Industrial Revolution to achieve it. It was a deception, a shell of limestone hiding a skeleton of steel, much like the king himself, who wore the robes of a monarch but hid the soul of a recluse. Stepping inside Neuschwanstein is like stepping inside the mind of Richard Wagner. The entire castle is effectively a dedication to the composer's life and work. Ludwig was obsessed with Wagner's operas, seeing in them the same longing for the divine and the mythical that he felt in his own heart. The centerpiece of the castle, and the reason for its massive size, is the Sangersaal, or Singer's Hall. Located on the 4th floor, it occupies the entire eastern side of the palace. It is a reconstruction of the Minstrel's Hall at the Wartburg, the setting for the legendary singers contest, depicted in Wagner's opera Tannhäuser. The room is breathtaking. A coffered ceiling with zodiac signs looks down upon a stage painted with a forest scene. The walls are adorned with frescoes depicting the saga of Parzival and the Holy Grail. Immense chandeliers and candelabras were designed to hold hundreds of candles, creating a shimmering, otherworldly atmosphere. Yet there is a haunting silence here. This hall, with its perfect acoustics and grand stage, was never designed to host an audience. Ludwig did not build it for royal balls or state dinners. He built it as a private sanctuary where he could wander alone, imagining the music of the spheres. It is a theater for an audience of one. Descend to the third floor and you enter the throne room. If the Singers' Hall is a tribute to art, the throne room is a desperate plea for divine authority. Inspired by Byzantine churches and the All Saints Court Church in Munich, it dazzles with gold leaf, colorful mosaics, and a massive chandelier shaped like a Byzantine crown. The floor is a mosaic of over 2 million stones, depicting the animal and plant kingdom. The walls show the 12 apostles and 6 canonized kings, linking Ludwig to a lineage of holy rulers. The room was designed to showcase the Grail perspective, the idea of the king as a mediator between God and the people. But at the end of the room, up a flight of white marble steps, lies the apse where the throne was meant to sit. It is empty. The throne itself, designed to be made of gold and ivory, was never finished. This empty space is the most poignant symbol of Ludwig's reign. The room was built to celebrate the absolute power of the monarchy, yet it stands incomplete, a hollow shell. By the time the room was nearing completion, Ludwig's power was largely theoretical, his finances were in ruin, and his time was running out. The empty dais serves as a permanent reminder of the gap between Ludwig's aspirations and his reality. Between the royal living quarters and the study lies one of the most bizarre features of any royal residence in Europe, the grotto. Ludwig had an artificial dripstone cave built inside the castle walls. Using plaster, jute, and wire mesh, sculptors created a realistic cavern, complete with a waterfall and a lighting system that could change the colors of the rock. It was inspired by the Horselberg Mountain from the Tannhäuser saga. From this cave, Ludwig could step through a sliding glass door into a winter garden with a panoramic view of the Alps. The contrast is jarring. One moment you are in a dark, mythical cave. The next you are looking out over the expanse of Bavaria. Adjoining the grotto is the living room, focused entirely on the Lohengrin saga. The swan motif is everywhere, embroidered on tablecloths, carved into door handles, and painted on walls. A large Majolica swan vase dominates the room. This was Ludwig's private refuge, the place where he read, dreamed, and increasingly, where he hid from his ministers. He began to sleep during the day and live at night, earning him the nickname the Moon King. He would take nocturnal sleigh rides through the mountains in an elaborate gilded sleigh, dressed in historical costume, sometimes stopping to have picnics in the snow. To the locals, he became a ghostly figure, a benevolent but distant spirit haunting the high passes. Beauty has a cost, and for Ludwig the cost was astronomical. Ludwig paid for his castles out of his private privy purse, not the state treasury, but his ambitions far outstripped his income. By 1885, he was 14 million marks in debt. He borrowed heavily from European royalty and banks. When his credit ran dry, he demanded his ministers find loans. He threatened to dismiss the entire cabinet if they did not fund his building projects. He even toyed with the idea of robbing banks in Munich or Berlin to finance the completion of Neuschwanstein. The Bavarian government was paralyzed. They had a king who refused to govern, who spent months in the mountains inaccessible to his advisors, and whose debts were threatening the reputation of the monarchy. The Prime Minister, Lutz, decided to act. He commissioned a psychiatric report to declare Ludwig insane. The report was a farce. It was compiled by Dr. Bernhard von Guden, who had never personally examined the king. It relied on hearsay from disgruntled servants who reported on Ludwig's eccentric behaviors, his talking to statues, his dining with imaginary guests, spirits of French kings, and his violent outbursts. On June 8, 1886, the report was finalized. Ludwig was declared incurable. On June 10, 1886, a government commission arrived at Neuschwanstein to depose the king. But the mad king had loyal friends. A coachman tipped him off. The local police, the fire brigade, and nearby villagers rushed to the castle to protect him. When the government commissioners arrived, they were met by bayonets. The Baroness Spera von Truxes, loyal to Ludwig, reportedly attacked the commissioners with her umbrella. The commission was forced to retreat in humiliation. For a brief moment, Neuschwanstein served its function as a fortress. But it was a fleeting victory. Ludwig had the chance to flee to Munich and rally the people who still loved him. But his will was broken. He sank into a deep depression/lethargy. 2 days later, on June 12th, a second commission arrived. This time, there was no resistance. Dr. Gudden entered the castle and informed Ludwig that he was no longer king. Ludwig asked the doctor, "How can you declare me insane? You have never examined me." Gudden replied that the evidence was overwhelming. That night, under the cover of darkness and heavy rain, Ludwig was taken from his dream castle. As he left, he reportedly said to a servant, "Preserve these rooms as a sanctuary. Do not let them be profaned by the curious." He would never see Neuschwanstein again. Ludwig was transported to Berg Castle on the shores of Lake Starnberg, which had been converted into a makeshift asylum. The windows were barred, peepholes were drilled into the doors. On the evening of June 13th, 1886, just one day after his capture, Ludwig went for a walk in the park with Dr. Gudden. The doctor, perhaps overconfident, or perhaps underestimating the king's physical strength, dismissed the orderlies, opting to walk with the king alone. They were due back by 8 p.m. They never returned. A search party was launched in the driving rain. At 11:10 p.m., 2 bodies were found floating in the shallow water near the shore: King Ludwig II and Dr. von Gudden. The official version stated that Ludwig murdered the doctor and then committed suicide by drowning, but the details didn't add up. The water was waist deep. Ludwig was a strong swimmer. There was no water found in his lungs during the autopsy, suggesting he might have died before entering the water or from shock. Dr. Gudden's body showed signs of a violent struggle and strangulation. Decades later, theories still abound. Was he shot? Some claim a bullet hole was found in his jacket, later covered up by the family. Did he try to escape to a waiting boat and suffer a heart attack? Or was it a simple tragic murder-suicide born of despair? The Wittelsbach secret remains one of history's great cold cases. At the time of his death, Neuschwanstein was far from finished. The massive keep that was supposed to dominate the courtyard was never built. The interior was only 1/3 complete. 6 weeks after his death, the government did exactly what Ludwig had feared most. They opened the castle to the paying public. The administrators needed the ticket sales to pay off the massive debts Ludwig had accumulated. The hermit's refuge became a tourist trap almost overnight. In a strange twist of fate, the castle that nearly bankrupted the royal family became the most profitable asset of the Bavarian state. By 1899, the debt was fully paid off. Today, the castle generates millions of euros annually, funding the restoration of other Bavarian monuments. During World War II, the castle served a darker purpose. It became a depot for the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, a Nazi organization dedicated to looting art from occupied Europe. The castle stored thousands of stolen works intended for Hitler's planned Führer Museum. In the final days of the war, SS troops were ordered to blow up the castle to prevent the art from falling into Allied hands, but the local custodian refused the order, saving the building for a second time. Today, Neuschwanstein stands as a monument to the power of imagination. It is a place of contradictions, a medieval fortress built with industrial technology, a private sanctuary overrun by the public, a symbol of financial ruin that became a gold mine. Critics in the 19th century called it kitsch, a monstrous waste of resources. But time has been kind to Ludwig's vision. In a world that becomes increasingly uniform and utilitarian, the sheer audacity of Neuschwanstein, the commitment to beauty for beauty's sake, resonates deeply. As the sun sets behind the Tyrolean Alps, casting long shadows over the white towers, the castle seems to float, detaching itself from the earth. It remains exactly what Ludwig intended it to be, a stone dream, a refuge where the harshness of reality cannot enter, and where the Swan King reigns forever in the silence of the mountains.